Joining us right now is legal experts, Dr. Tracy Pearson. Dr. Tracy, thanks so much for joining us. Now, this happened so fast. The trial lasted about 6 weeks, but this verdict came in less than 3 hours. Tell us, were you surprised by any of this?
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you as always. I was not surprised by either the verdict or how long it took to reach the verdict. Jurors are human beings and they are weighing evidence, even though we tell them not to. They are weighing evidence as they listen to witnesses and see evidence. And the reason why they do that is because that's how the human brain works. You can't ask them to divorce how their brain works. So as they hear information, they're shifting their thoughts. In this situation, it seemed as if they came to a conclusion very quickly. That form, unlike other types of jury forms that I've seen, looked very simple. They had to make really a decision of guilty or not guilty, or we can't make a decision. And there were very limited charges. So I'm not surprised about the time it took, and I am not surprised about the outcome.
Dr. Tracy, let's talk about Murdaugh's reaction. He was stoic, he showed no emotion, but during the trial and when he testified on the witness stand, it was the complete opposite. He was crying, he showed just the opposite. Can you just tell us what your reaction was to this? And is there any difference if, let's say, he did show emotion and let's say if they were to file an appeal?
The emotion was there. It was very difficult to see when the sentence was read, and he was very nervous. He was shaking. You could tell that this was sort of the moment for him. On the stand, he appeared differently, and the reason for that, in my perspective, is that it is sort of where the rubber meets the road moment. It is the moment where you tell your story, and it is a moment where you're in a high level of stress. And again, the human brain responds to that differently. Some people become very emotional. Back in the day, there was a case called State of New Hampshire versus Pam Smart, and when Pam Smart testified in her trial, she became known as the Ice Queen or the Ice Princess because she showed absolutely no emotion over her husband being killed. And her standing accused of that murder. So in this situation, what we saw was somebody who was emotional, and it could have been an act, it might not have been, it could have been a combination of things. But when it comes to an appeal, they aren't considering the emotion of the defendant or the emotion of the defendant at the sentencing.
All right, well, now let's talk about the prosecution and the defense. Prosecutors had said Murdaugh killed his wife and son not to expose his financial crimes, and there was no murder weapon. However, Murdaugh admitted to lying about his whereabouts on the night of the murders during his testimony. Meanwhile, the defense said during closing arguments today that state agents were eager to get someone convicted and they had misrepresented evidence. What did you think while watching this case?
Well, we've talked about the issue of evidence before, the difference between direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. Direct evidence meaning that we have no inference that leads to a conclusion. If I hear gunshots and I don't see someone being shot, but I discover a dead body, I can assume that that gunshot was caused the death of that person. That's circumstantial evidence. And that's what they had here, was a lot of circumstantial evidence. They also had a defendant who took the stand in his own defense, which is never a good idea just because of that high stress situation. And so I was very disappointed about the state's behavior during the grand jury proceedings and the misrepresentation of blood spatter evidence. But the state holds a lot of power. And you saw the difference between the law enforcement agent who misrepresented that evidence and the way that the jury viewed that versus how they viewed similar dishonesty when it came to financial crimes. So in the end, I think that what we have here is a case that was decided on circumstantial evidence, and lawyers are held to a higher standard. This name is well known in that community. And so I think a lot of those softer issues figured into how the jury viewed the verdict.
Dr. Tracy, sentencing is set for tomorrow morning. Tell us, what can we expect to happen, and what are the legal procedures?
Absolutely. As you heard the judge mention, the judge did not sentence tonight because of the late hour. He wants to give anyone who is considered to be a victim the opportunity to be heard, because there is a state law in South Carolina called the Victims' Bill of Rights. And so he's going to give people the opportunity to be heard. He's going to give the defendant the opportunity to be heard himself. He may very well hear from people on behalf of the defendant. He may have received letters in support of the defendant, or may receive those. And so he's going to consider all of that information in determining the sentence, and either aggravating the sentence, making it life without parole, or not making it life without parole and giving him a lesser sentence, depending on the circumstances that he takes into consideration. But it's the judge's decision.
All right, some really good points there. Do you have any final thoughts?
This case has been a wild ride, and it is an example of, I think, just the very worst of how things can collide, how people's drug addictions, how financial stress, how poor decision making, and how all of that can collide to make terrible, bad decisions that when you start to slide down that slope of making bad decisions, you keep on sliding.
All right, legal expert, Dr. Tracy Pearson, thank you so much for breaking all that down for us regarding this murder trial. Again, Alex Murdaugh found guilty on all charges. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.